Hello everyone, this is Quinn here from newbreedagent.com, and in this video I want to talk about a topic that's been extremely important for not only me to understand but also to convey to my clients and students at New Breed Agent Academy. And so this video is going to be about avoiding the echo chamber, and if it doesn't make too much sense right now, I trust that throughout the video that you watch you're going to be able to really understand what it is that I'm referring to and how we have to really guard our attention, guard our focus, and really become aware of what's going on in today's world. So with that being said, I have three main points that I'm going to cover, and within them they all kind of overlap. They're all really in a sense the same thing, but I just want to address them in this order. So the first component is social media psychology, the second is instant gratification, and the third is losing focus. So like I said, you could imagine that each one overlaps, and that, if you participate or, become addicted to any one of these things, they create the others, right? But let's talk about some of the social media psychology, what I've observed and really what I've experienced as well, because being an online advertiser for the past 5 years, I've spent a lot of time, I've spent a lot of money on Facebook, on Instagram, and, Facebook Messenger. And, sometimes it gets really tricky because, spending so much time on these different platforms, I see how valuable they are. I see how we can use them to bring new potential clients to my clients. I see how we can use them to grow our business, scale our message, reach more people, create content, create groups, etc. Right? But what begins to happen, and there's multiple books on this topic. One of the ones that I highly recommend is called Deep Work. It's by a guy called Cal Newport, and he really just talks about being able to stay focused in this noisy world. And what's really important to understand is that they have designed these platforms like slot machines. So obviously I've posted this here on one of these social media channels, if not multiple, because I understand that this is where the attention is and this is where people consume content. But another thing that you have to consider is that, and I want you to be aware of, is that they have designed and worked with the top scientists, the top engineers, and analysts to study what is going to make people addicted to these platforms. Because you have to remember that Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of these different companies that are leading the way when it comes to users and adoption make money from advertisers. So, Facebook is free, right? You can go create an account, use your email, and before you know it, you have an account. You can add people for friends, you can create groups and do a lot of amazing things, right? And in no way am I saying that, these things are necessarily bad or good. I think it's just important to address these things because as real estate agents and entrepreneurs, there's a lot of things calling for our attention. There's a lot of things that are trying to get us away from doing the main thing. And I know this because this has been real for me. I know others and have seen other people that, are in this loop that these platforms can create. So when it comes to the slot machine, the real way that you want to understand this is, number one, these companies make money off of your attention, right? So in order for them to make this money, people use these platforms to advertise on. So, somebody like me or any one of our clients, they want to get seller leads or buyer leads, right? And so what we teach them to do is use these platforms like Facebook, like Instagram, so that they can capture these people's attention without having to rely on traditional strategies like cold calling and door knocking and etc. Right? But what the slot machine refers to is that there is just a possibility, right? There's a possibility that I may see something entertaining, right? There's a possibility that I may see that one post. There's a possibility that I'm going to get a notification. There's that possibility that I'm going to get an inbound message, right? And on and on and on. And so what this possibility creates is this addiction, right? Because what ends up happening is there's the possibility that it's going to work. There's the possibility that something is going to, basically create and spark dopamine and serotonin within your brain. And so you're constantly checking, you're constantly swiping between and hovering between these different apps and softwares. And like I said, I have been a victim of this, and this still sometimes creeps in. And so when I make these videos, I have to remind myself too of how important these things are and how they can really impact your perception of the world, your perception about what you're doing. And I'll address more of that in point number 3. But that's the high level view, is that these companies make money from your attention. And so in order to do so, they have to work with top scientists, they have to work with engineers. And if you are someone that's into design and interface, you'll notice that on Facebook, on YouTube, and I mean most recently Facebook, that they've recently updated the interface. And so the interface is basically the user experience, the user interface that you see and observe. And it's really what creates the feeling of the app. It creates the look. And the quicker things load and the smoother things are, in one sense, for marketers and people that use it to get attention, is beneficial, because you can see how those that are consumers, those that are on these platforms all day, every day, it's making it easier for you as a marketer or you as an advertiser to get that attention, because you're capitalizing on that essential addiction and design that's really going to get people to click more. It's going to get them to spend more time on the app. And I tried as long as I could on Facebook to stick with the classic version, because they actually just updated it. They just updated the ads manager, and they're constantly making these changes, right? Because really this is their service, this is their product, it's this platform. And so in order for them to continue to generate the revenue that they'd like to generate and capture attention, they need advertisers to continue to invest onto their platform, right? So that's the first thing to understand, is that become super aware of when you check social media and when you go on it, and what maybe is occurring at a deeper unconscious level. Because what you'll find is that there's just that possibility, right? There's the possibility that maybe something amazing is going to show up there, right? And really 99% of the time, if not 99.99% of the time, nothing really is even occurring. It's just our own perception, right? It's just our own scrolling, and it's kind of just something to do. But when it comes to meaningful, valuable content, meaningful, valuable, intentional work, most of the time you don't really find it there. So I've had to adjust, with my clients, I've had to adjust what we do, because, really what's going to happen is that they're obviously going to be, and you want to utilize, some of that psychology to get the attention of people. But you also have to be aware that it doesn't kind of eat away at you and your attention and time. So that's the first thing, is that it's kind of like a slot machine. Now, the second point here is that what I've observed is that, if you spend too much time on the platform, what happens is your brain is essentially faced with so many different decisions, too many decisions. And, decisions that we have not evolved yet to be able to handle. And, if you think about even just 10 years ago, the amount of choices that were available were already abundant. But now, there's not only physical choices, there's not only physical things and items to choose from in stores, but there's actually digital choices. Which app, which software should I use, which CRM should I use, which meal delivery service should I use, which transportation service should I use, right? And within these platforms like Facebook, look at all the friends, look at all the groups, look at all the ads, look at all the companies, look at all the options, right? There's really no shortage of options. And so, what I've personally experienced is that I start making too many decisions in a short period of time. So what I mean by that is that, let's say you have 1 hour that you're spending on social media and you're bouncing between Facebook and Instagram and Gmail and TikTok and Snapchat and YouTube and all these different things, right? And within that time period, you're making so many different decisions because you're like, do I like that content? Yes, no. Do I like it? Yes, no. Oh, I like it. Let me click there. Let me go inside this profile. Let me scroll through the profile. Oh, I'm bored now. Let me go to another one, right? And on and on and on. And you're making these micro decisions that, really lead you to making so many different decisions in such a short period of time. And if you look at the younger generation and, how they use these different apps, I mean, most of them are just glued to the apps and glued to their phone. And so they're faced with so many different decisions in such short periods of time. And if you consider the fact that that's just 1 hour versus, 8 hours a day, it really changes the way that you may perceive social media and how you use it. So I call this avoiding the echo chamber because each one of these points and each one of these things that I'm sharing will cause you, or, each one of these points basically leads you to the understanding that what happens in this echo chamber is you get drowned out. Like, you drown out your own voice, you drown out your own intuition, you drown out your own creativity because, as I mentioned, there's the possibility. This is how they keep you on, right? There's this psychology that there's a possibility that something amazing is going to happen, or there's some piece of content that is just going to, spark your interest, or you're going to get that red notification. They design the platform in a way that really keeps you on it. And then there's the decisions, the amount of decisions, and you just keep, once you start clicking and clicking and clicking, then it shows you more of these different things. And then, it just feeds itself. And all of this really, on really any of these platforms, it's centered around the algorithm. So what that means is that this algorithm for Facebook, for Instagram, for TikTok, for YouTube, it can make billions of decisions in, microseconds. It doesn't even need, any sort of human intelligence to actually make these decisions for them. Humans design them, but, it knows if I click on a housing ad, to show more housing ads. If I click on a thing about cameras, it's going to show me more cameras, more equipment, more, closely related products and services to that initial intention, right? So that's how they keep you in this grid, right? And then what happens is that it gets you addicted to instant gratification, right? Because, if you check your phone in the first, few minutes of the morning, you see messages and notifications and emails and alerts and content and ads and all these things. Like, number one, think about how many decisions you've already made, and what ends up happening is that your brain follows that groove. It wants to follow that groove for the rest of the day because, and I've seen this for myself, when I wake up and I check, Facebook and check Instagram and do all these different things, then I start wanting to check throughout the entire day. And so it's really something we got to watch out for because, like I said, you don't even know how these things are actually influencing your psychology and influencing the decisions that you make at such a deep level. And an example that I have of this on a very practical note is that I have here in my apartment, I have 2 of these little Alexa devices. And you can go on and on about what these things do. and what they listen to and all that. And to me, it makes perfect sense that they understand and listen for things that I'm saying, key words, and maybe, are listening at all times, right? But what ended up happening is that I was here with, my girlfriend, and we were talking about social media because, I think it is really something that we've overlooked in terms of the importance of really monitoring your time and monitoring the way you use the platform. And so we were talking about it, and one of the things that I ended up saying was that I think it's interesting that on all of the platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, it's all centered around what you call a feed, right? F-E-E-D. And so, if you think about animals and, animals that are in, that are used for food, right? They're all basically attached to a feed, right? The cows have a feed, the pigs have a feed, etc., right? So it's quite fascinating that the Facebook feed, right? It's like, it's a feed, it's being fed to us, right? And the less aware we are of what we're consuming in terms of the content, the amount of time we spend consuming, the less aware we become and the more it actually becomes normal. And so when it comes to feed, really be aware that that's what it's called. A Facebook feed, an Instagram feed, a YouTube feed, right? Your TikTok feed, right? And even on TikTok, it's called For You, right? It's like the feed for you. This is what's going to get you addicted to, basically just consuming and staying on this way of thinking. So that's the psychology, just a very brief introduction to the psychology. There's much more. But I'm sure if you're spending time on any of these platforms, you're probably aware of what it does to you. So the second thing is instant gratification. So what I've seen personally is that, when I begin to use these platforms and I'm staying on there, I'm checking it, I'm in that groove, I start to gather, my brain creates a distorted perception, right? Because what happens is you go and check Instagram and you see somebody that's, making $50 million a year and they're on their yacht and they're on vacation and, they're traveling the world, and, then you go and scroll and see another person, right? And so before you know it, you've seen these different types of people that have acquired different types of assets, that have, maybe even not acquired them, but have made it appear to, be a certain way. And so what ends up happening is this distorts your perception, and you actually then move out of your own truth, move out of your own core stability, and you potentially start comparing, you start judging, you start rushing things, you become impatient, and you forget about trusting the process. And I say all these things because, like I said, this is what I have had to work on, have continued to have to work on, and really audit, because it's real, it's really real. And if you don't watch out for it, it's super subtle how it'll creep up on you and start taking your attention piece by piece, and it starts to take, your focus. It starts to take away that you think about what you're creating, right? And so when you're in that state of, checking the slot machine, scrolling on the slot machine, spinning it, hopefully getting a win, you start distorting your perception. It starts showing you more. If you click on, an image of somebody with a car or a big house or whatever it is that maybe is your feed, before you know it, now you've seen 25 people that are in this, completely different reality than you in, 5 seconds, right? And on top of it, with, the way that they've designed the platforms, the way that they've designed the content, it really can, like I said, it can really take you down here. So the other thing that I see when it comes from the perspective of like practical lead generation and converting, Facebook leads onto, buyers or sellers, is you have to remember that this is what these consumers are also experiencing to some extent, right? And so somebody that's looking to buy a home, somebody that's looking to sell a home, they're seeing tons of realtors, they're seeing tons of templates, they're seeing all these different things, right? And so in one side, for the advertiser's perspective, it can be very beneficial because you can bridge the gap and find new people to connect with that want to buy or want to sell. But you have to remember that what ends up happening is if you don't have something that's at least a little bit different, these leads or potential leads could lack intention, right? Because, just like we scroll, click, watch, rewind, unwatch, switch apps, change, before you know it, you've got people that have gone through that hundreds of times per day. They've clicked on your ad, they clicked on another ad, they've submitted their information to 5 different things, right? So the point here though is that although this is to some extent the reality that we live in and what can be caused from, staying in this echo chamber, is that you still have to be able to play and navigate within it, right? So it doesn't mean like, and if that's for you, then that's great. Not using social media, quitting social media, getting off social media and doing something else, then that's great. Now, if you are wanting to participate and stay in this, use these platforms, you can use them successfully. You can do it in a way that has intention, but it sometimes takes some space and some time off of them to really come back to them and use them in that way. And what I mean by that is, if you're just constantly on them and your brain is in that groove of just clicking, typing, texting, messaging, you name it, liking, commenting, sharing, watching, consuming, it's hard to really create intention from that space, right? So sometimes you need to understand it from this perspective, take a look outside of it, understand that you want to use it from a high level view to find new buyers, to find new sellers, but you also want to make sure you don't get swept into the tide and that you're using it and consuming it the way that they've designed it for you. So there are different tools and protocols that we've used and that I use and we teach our students to use so that they can, be a little bit more aware. Fact of the matter is if you participate on the platform, at some point you're going to get swept in and you got to get recentered, go back to the drawing board, create some different, rules and different things to be aware of, so that you don't get swept in too far again. But like I said, if you're choosing to participate on them, the best way is to first use them, use it for your intention, use it to grow your business, use it to share your message, use it to find new people, right? Use it to create valuable content. But if you are still doing that, you're going to get into the tide of checking and looking for the alerts, looking for the content and all these different things, right? And so it's great because it has allowed the world to cross communicate. It's allowed for open source communication. Information travels faster. But when they look back at this in 100 years and, wherever we are at that point in time, who knows what social media, what the role it truly played in our evolution and how it helped us, how it eliminated or, created complexity, created problems, right? Everything to some extent is going to have pros and cons, but I still think it's important as a real estate agent or any entrepreneur in general to just be aware of how you're using it. to install different protocols or different systems to help you stay a little bit more intentional with them, limit your time on them, limit your usage of these platforms. And if you are going to use it from the perspective that you want other people to be consuming your message or consuming your, offering that you're putting out into the marketplace. So that's the other thing, is watch out for this, because if you start getting caught on this thing, it's really going to be hard to, if you get caught up here, it's going to be hard to stick with stuff. And I've seen this for me because, like I said, who doesn't want something right now? I mean, that's like the ultimate human characteristic. Like, I want it now. I want it for the least amount of money. I want the best results. I want it as soon as possible. So it's great because we are able to now begin to use the technology to deliver better experience, to get people what they want faster. But like I said, if you get caught on the other end of that and you're constantly looking for things very fast, very quick, give me the formula right now, let me buy it right now, it just really leads to impulse, and what ends up happening is that you have to imagine, if, like I said, if that groove of impulse is what, your action has been created from, like, oh, I need to buy this right now, and you just buy it, and let me just, throw this on, make sure it gets working, and let's go. What ends up happening is that, if stuff doesn't work, or if you face resistance in whatever it is that you're trying to do, well, you've already taken an action based on impulse, and so then you're going to change, make corrections, overcorrect potentially based on that same impulse. And so this is a big one to watch out for, is that, when you make that action from the place of like instant gratification or instant results, instant weight loss, instant whatever, it's been, throughout our entire, throughout our entire human evolution, right? Then if stuff isn't instant, because most things aren't really actually instant, we've just kind of created a reality where they can appear to be instant, right? Then you're going to change it up, you're going to tear it down, you're going to break it apart, you're going to wonder why it's not working, and then you're going to go and move on to another thing, right? So it's just important here to be aware of what you're creating, give things time. I've had to work on this myself, work on rules, like objective rules, because, emotions, you're never really gonna, make an impulsive decision off of clear logic and objective, right? Like objective-based thinking. But when you're in your emotions, when things are impulsive, when you're on super high highs and you want it now and I'm ready to go and boom, 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 then when you face the reality of what you actually would have to do to maintain that system, to get results with it, to get success with it, you name it, then you may give up a little bit too quick, and maybe the thing does work, but like I said, when you move from that way of thinking, it really creates the conditions for the future. So I would watch this. Look at iMessage, look at emojis, look at, all these different things. They're so fast, and it's so beneficial because, when you are moving and you are anchored in the right intention, the ability to communicate across the world, or, even just a few cities away, and being able to have somebody get that information immediately is very powerful, right? But like I said, if you get too swept up in the psychology, you're in the slot machine yourself, you're, being influenced heavily by the decisions that you make, and, the algorithm and the feed and all these different things, and then you get hooked on this, it can come and bite you, especially if you're trying to build a business, because at the end of the day, there are still things that have not really changed. We've just created new things that maybe make it appear to change and have been different. So that's what I would say about instant gratification. And lastly is the losing focus, right? So what I've seen personally is, for me, is the multiple mentors gets confusing. So what I mean by that is that when I first got started in entrepreneurship, I didn't know this, right? And I think, like I said, there's not anything wrong with multiple mentors or anything like that. You just have to be really aware of what you're letting into the environment, because for me, I get influenced very easily. If I see another idea, if I see another way of doing things, I'm gonna get, naturally, I'm pretty creative, so I'll get enticed by that, and I think we can all relate to some extent. But I've had to condition myself and discipline myself with the multiple mentors thing. And so this was one of the things that I had to kind of, choose, lock in on, and stick to. And so what do I mean by this? Well, you're watching my content, right? And, you may be interested in growing your real estate business, learning how to run some ads, and, scaling, growing, building your business using technology, right? So maybe you found me, maybe you already know me, etc. Right? Well, you're going to watch me and, hear me say that. And, if you go and check out somebody else, which I'm not against at all, I'm just telling you my perspective, they're going to say something completely different. Be on social media, post stories, post lives, and maybe not even talk about some of these downfalls of what happens if you get caught in the slot machine, right? And so what ends up happening is this, right? You get caught into the psychology, right? There's no real more powerful form of influence than confusion. If you confuse somebody and you can get in their head, it's just like if you're playing sports, if you can confuse the opponent, if you're in their head, if they can't think clearly, if they're not calm, if they're not collected, before you know it, you have some good marketing, some good psychology, some good instant gratification tools behind it. Well, you're going to get confused and you're going to do a bunch of stuff. And the best way to keep people in their limited power is to keep them confused, to not let them stay focused, to not let them realize that they can do much more than they think, that they have unlimited creativity, right? And that they can use their own individual power and creativity and inspiration to create basically anything, right? But if you're caught up by what this person says and what that person says and how, well, that person's doing stories and then this person's doing YouTube and then that realtor is doing cold calling and that person is doing, YouTube ads, right? Or Facebook ads or lives or whatever, right? So it may not even come from the mentor standpoint, like you're actually listening to somebody speak about, something that you're interested in or getting mentorship from. It may just come from, multiple strategies, multiple different people, sharing different ways of doing things. And so what happens is it's nice initially because you get this you get this approach, right, of like different ways of doing things. One of the things that I hear people is like, oh, well, this person's doing that and I can take a little bit of that and do a little bit of this. And, while those things are in some form true, like having a wide variety of different skills and knowledge and ways that you can apply doing something, if you're not careful, you may be listening to individuals that don't have experience that has actually been tied or tried and tested over long periods of time. So that was where I personally got confused, because yes, there is value in using different strategies or using, different tactics or having different ways to, approach your mindset. But what ends up happening is that because of the social media psychology and the perception that is created from those people wanting to show and influence you, is that you don't really see the backside or the downside, right? So what ends up happening is that you can see one person do it one way, and then maybe they only did it for 2 days like that, and they just posted some quick results, and then now they're not even doing it anymore because it doesn't actually work. And then you go change what you're doing, change up your strategy, change up your flow because of that. And then another person has been doing it for 5 years. It's boring, it's not exciting, it's not instant, right? But they've gotten results and they've got a ton of data behind it. So I had to learn this for myself, because like I said, any direction you pick is gonna bring forth results to some extent, But for me, I had to lock in on basically one mentor. And, because of doing that, I was able to really and have been able to see things develop, and what maybe I thought at the time would take a month or 2 months is taking years, but now I'm seeing it. Now I'm seeing the benefits, and now I'm getting momentum. So with social media, there's not a lot of people selling a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year approach, and I know things in social media change and you have to adapt, and business changes and business is rapidly changing. But in terms of who you kind of choose, that could be a big influence. If you're committed to listening to this person, then that's great. But I would offer and make sure that that person has results, has, tried and true proven results with data and different things. Because, like I said, if you go and click on one person's thing, and I've seen this, for me with other real estate marketers, and they, post some quick results, and, their client's not even working with them anymore, right? So there's obviously things and other factors I don't observe, but, at the beginning, it was like I would go check out something, find some result that somebody got for a day or 2 days or whatever, and not know that, and then go make it myself. It didn't work, and then I just keep chasing it down, right? And what this leads to is you don't actually develop your own perspective, your own way of doing it. And if you don't have the balance between having somebody that's done it, knowing that they have the ability to get amazing results, but your own take and voice that's governing the way that you should be doing it, you'll just be chasing down, oh, well, this person says to do this many videos. This person says no videos at all. This person says run YouTube. This person says run Facebook. And then, you really end up not doing anything at all, right? And brings me to the next point, which is holding variables constant. So this has been a big thing for me personally, is that, I used to, if things didn't work pretty quickly, I would change and have still, like I said, I've had to work on all of this, because I think when you get so deep into the psychology, it actually influences you maybe in subtle ways that we're not even aware of yet. But what I've had to do is hold variables constant. So for example, in our program, we teach you how to run ads, right? Facebook ads. And so when it comes to Facebook ads, you have a few main components, to running an ad. So let's just say, to keep it simple, that we have our audience, right? So Zillow, Realtor.com, etc., right? And then you have the actual ads themselves, right? So you have, let's say, 4 images, right? And, what I used to do before was, I would create a set of audiences, a set of ads, and then I would just, if they didn't work or I felt like they could perform better, I would change all of it. I would change all the images, change all the audiences, change the budget, and change all this stuff. And then what I learned from my mentor was that, you basically have no clear indication of if what you're doing is even working. And so it's crazy because, my emotions had conditioned me to believing that by switching things up, by just trying what I was feeling, that I was going to get the result quicker. But in all reality, I would actually be spending the same effort, the same money, potentially even less effort, most likely less effort, by just holding one variable constant and making slower, more objective, systematic changes. So like I said before, I would have Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, etc., then a bunch of ads. And if they didn't work, I would change it all. Now, what we do and what we teach in our program is you choose one variable that you want to change, right? So what we teach first is the audience. So for example, you choose your ads, your 4 ads that you believe are going to work. And this comes down to the image, the copy, which is just the words, the text, and the headline, and even the button, right? So we keep the entire ads except for the images because you could imagine these as like a set of ads, right? So in a way, if we change one thing over here and we apply it with the same 4 ads, it's still the same, okay? So what we do now is that if we teach you how to make the first change. So let's say Zillow. So now we run these 4 ads, same 4 images, same 4 headlines to Zillow. Then, and in the same area and the same placement, right? Then the other thing we do is if we want to add another one, we do Realtor.com, right? This is just an example. And so then when these 2 ad sets, these 2 different audiences face off with each other, then we can really see after 5 days or so. That was another thing, is I used to change ads, within like a few hours. And I've learned a lot since then, right? And I've even seen, our clients like change the ads because they think they don't work. And, I have even in our program this thing called a Judgment Day, and I show live video of each day and how, on the first day, like the first few days, like one of the ads wasn't even performing. And then by the end of like 10 days, it was the winning ad, lowest lead. But at first it didn't even look like it made sense to run the ad, right? So what we do is we teach you how to hold a variable constant. So it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying to test Zillow versus Realtor.com, but it means that instead of testing Zillow, Realtor.com, new images, new budget, new headline, new button, new placement, new all this stuff, and running them all at the same time, really we just teach, one thing. So if you're going to change the audience, then that's what you're going to change. And if you're going to change the ads, then you got to commit to the audience, right? And if you're going to even like keep the same image, right, then you got to stick to that image and then change, maybe that's where you change the headline, right? So if you keep the images the same, now you can change the headline or the text, right? But the key is if you add multiple variables and you're testing them at different times, you don't have really clear logic. And, for me, like I said, I've worked for the past 5 years on, managing my emotions, and it's a never-ending journey. But, my workflow and the way I did all this was like super chaotic, and it was just like, I feel like that's not working, and that was it. And the whole thing would change, and I would kind of destroy it almost. And then I would have to end up redoing it. And what I ended up finding was that after, let's just say 5 times of tearing it up, tearing it down, and then trying to redo it, that had I maybe just stuck with the initial thing, taken my observations, set them out, and then made the next set of hypotheses, right? That I would have saved time, saved money, and actually made even better progress and had better results. But so often, for me, I was conditioned to just go like that. Like, oh, well, I just change it and that's it. And, for me, I'm more enthusiastic, I'm more driven, I'm more like, I would say I've had to spend more time working on numbers, understanding numbers, and like getting myself to be excited about numbers and use them because, they govern what we really do. But a lot of us may not be around a lot of numbers, or if we are, maybe we're too extreme or we don't have enough. And so either you end up changing everything and just trying to do all this stuff, or you're just about numbers and maybe you're lacking like some enthusiasm or lacking some drive or stuff that may not make sense numerically or logically in the short term, but if you stayed, enthusiastic about it, you could create it, right? So for me, I land more on the side of like just changing it up, switching it. I feel like that's going to work. And I think a lot of the times I do have a good feeling of what things are going to work and like what's marketable, what's going to pop, and how things are going to move. But I've had to learn to like restrain myself from just doing that and just automatically making that decision and, either writing it out, planning it out, waiting a few days, see if it's still there. Because, when it comes to ads or funnels and stuff like this, I mean, this isn't going to transform, your business from 0 to 1 million. Like you need leads, you need people to talk to, but there's so much more that goes on. And so when it comes to ads and marketing or making that quick call or that right away, I mean, yeah, sometimes those things are the things that are limiting us from getting to the next stage. But a lot of the times it's not that. It's the methodical, practical framework of staying consistent over long periods of time, not one miracle strategy or one miracle video that's what did it for me. That video is what took me from here to there, right? It's not just one shot, one Hail Mary. I mean, there's going to be scenarios where you have to maybe take those risks, make that call, try that marketing strategy. But like I said, you don't want to build your business off of a miracle and off of like miracle efforts, right? Because if you are, then it's not even predictable, and you can't delegate or outsource miracles and winning the lottery, right? So we got to be aware, and that's another thing I would invite you to do. And maybe for you, it's not in ads or funnels or stuff like that, but hold variables constant. If you're going to run a set of ads, keep them for 5 days. Only change one thing and actually see, or if you're going to make cold calls, then stick to cold calls. Don't change the script. Don't change anything, and just see what happens, and then you can actually see, oh, is it the script? Oh, is it the numbers? Oh, is it the leads? But if you're trying all these different things at once, which is, in my experience, what social media has kind of created and conditioned us to do if we let it, is change things all the time. Change that because it's so instant. We're always like, and I've even seen this where people message me on Instagram, then on Facebook, and then I do it, and I'm like, why am I, like, we're forgetting that it's just a conversation, right? And we're doing and going and adjusting, right? So last thing here is that, what ends up happening is if you fall too deep into this psychology is you'll start to actually create that reality. So there's something called synchronicity bias. And so what that means is that, we've all experienced synchronicity, right? Where we think about somebody, they call us, or we think about a car and that's all we see, or whatever, right? But what ends up happening is that if you are ungrounded in the way that you perceive synchronicity, you may think everything's synchronicity, right? So for example, let's say you click on an ad about, a lead, Facebook lead forms and Facebook ad templates, right? And you click on it, and then now that's all you see. That's all, you're in the algorithm. You're not seeing the invisible cause and effect relationships that are really governing what you're consuming. And now that's all you see on Facebook. That's all you see on YouTube. And now you're jumping on the instant gratification, you're seeing so much of the same different thing, and now you're like, your brain has been conditioned to think, oh well, I'm seeing this for a reason, and this is the one I need to do. That's why, the grass is greener there. That's the one. That's going to be the one that transforms and changes my business, right? But really, and this is what we even teach in our program, is that most of the time the stuff that works, it's not really, sexy. It's not really super different. I mean, there are things and frameworks you can follow to stay current and stay fresh. For example, we've got a nice camera, we've got a nice light, but if I'm just telling you about marketing and stuff like that, I mean, that's going to come and go. But these things, being aware of slot machine technology and slot machine psychology, making too many decisions and not sticking to things, being influenced by an algorithm, being influenced by people and things other than your intention, and getting hooked on, things that happen immediately, distorting your perception. These things aren't really going to change. I mean, the platforms may change, but, really we focus on evergreen information, evergreen content, evergreen frameworks, so that you're not constantly chasing down things. And, like I said, if you start consuming this stuff, I mean, there's unlimited templates, there's unlimited ads, there's unlimited funnels and apps and new things and places to be. But, we have finite energy. You can't do concurrent actions at once. You can't, be on Facebook and on YouTube and all these things and post the same thing and do all the same thing. I mean, yeah, you can use softwares to distribute it, but the point that I'm referring to is that, at some point your focus is gonna go into either one main or one set of things that you can fully commit to, or it's gonna go and be fragmented into a bunch of little things, and and those things come and go. Right? So it takes a lot more time than people think to make sure something's proven, to make sure something's been tested in the real world and has a lot of results. Because there's a lot of people that, put a template up and they get some results, or they get a few listings, or they go live and, it works. And I also want to invite you to try and, invite some of those things as well. Just don't get caught up here, because if stuff's working, if there's a formula, if there's some science behind it, and that's potentially going to enable you to get some market share, then do it. I'm not saying like just resist all of it and not participate, because if you can get some followers, if you can get some likes, and it's in alignment and congruent with who you are, then there's no reason to not do things that are working in the real world and working today. But if you go too far and you get caught up on tactics and funnels and strategies and marketing only, and you fail to acknowledge this deeper truth, then you're just going to be kind of caught up in the whirlwind of what's out, what's new, what's hot, and you're not going to be able to build something that's sustainable. So it's a combination of both. It's a combination of evergreen content, evergreen principles, or principles that stay the same over long periods of time, and then adapting within it, keeping it fresh, keeping it engaging, and using what's out there, but not, like I said, getting overswept in all of it. So hopefully this brought you value today. This one's called Avoiding the Echo Chamber. Be aware of these things. Watch out for the social media psychology. Watch out for the slot machine. Watch out for where you're distorting your own perception and getting hooked on, things happening instantly. And watch when your focus starts breaking and you're listening to too many people, you're changing too many things, and now you're getting fed new things that are trying to confuse you even more. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you're on YouTube, hopefully you can give this a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and if you're on Facebook, feel free to comment as well. All the links that I have mentioned in other videos will be attached below. So if you want to schedule a call with myself, learn more about our program, New Breed Agent Academy, that link is below. Any other links or valuable content that that I've gathered will also be linked below. So I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to watch out for that, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.